1 week, nothing 2 weeks. The postcard said, we're going to hold your manuscript for 3 months. If we don't hear from you by then, we're going to assume that you don't want it. We'll throw it out. Because, you know, we just didn't have room for all those manuscripts, and the office started to overflow. It looked almost like my house, actually. Well, we didn't hear from him, and it was 6 months. And, you know, okay, maybe he gave up on us. 6 months after the last manuscript we got from him, we got a letter from this guy saying, aha, I caught you, I knew it, and I knew it, that you don't actually read the manuscripts. You're just looking for the big name authors, because I'm a no-name author. But if you had actually bothered to read these manuscripts, you would have published them all, because they were the best works of science fiction literature. These were award winners from the past, and these were written by these famous authors, and I just changed the characters' names in them, but you don't have the manuscripts, so you can't disprove it. Ha ha, I'm right, you're wrong. Okay, I thought the concept behind writing a science fiction story and sending it to a magazine was to get published and paid. This guy apparently had some completely different goal in mind, so he succeeded in that, whatever the heck it was. And of course, in this person's world, which has very little to do with reality, science fiction editors do not know anything about the history of science fiction, and so would not have known the greatest works of science fiction that have won all the awards and been written by all the big names. Except, of course, that we do. And we did. And if he had indeed been plagiarizing these stories, well, the greatest works of science fiction literature weren't all exactly 200 words. So he was taking out little snippets of them. 2, we hate to get involved in lawsuits, because lawsuits are expensive. And publishing is a micro-margin business. There's no money in it. We don't want to deal with lawsuits. Which is why we're not going to steal your story when we can just pay you 5 cents a word for it. We don't have to pay our lawyers. So when we catch a piece of plagiarism, we're not going to tell the author, because then the author will turn around and say, I did not plagiarize it, I'm going to sue your ass. So we just reject the story. And incidentally, you may have heard this happened a couple of years ago with the executive director of the Jane Austen Society, who took 1 or 2 of Jane Austen's novels and filed off the serial numbers and sent them to 18 or 20 publishing houses, and he was shocked, stunned, appalled when he got rejection letters from all of them. And only 2 of them said, we think these are plagiarized. Everybody in publishing was neither shocked, stunned, nor appalled. Well, we were appalled that this guy was so brilliant as to think this would actually be a really nifty thing to do. Because A, we do know what the literature sounds like, and we're not going to tell you it's plagiarism, because you'll sue us. If we just reject it out of hand, you got no reason to sue us. And by the way, Jane Austen's novels read like they were written a really long time ago, and they're old and moldy, and they're not going to sell today like that. They only sell because her name is on them. Know your market. Yeah, and you know, you're not trying to make the editor look like an idiot. You're trying to make the editor think you've written a wonderful story. He's going to give you money for it. But no. Do learn the English language. Do learn to tell a story. That, you know, we editors, there's not much in our lives. You know, as a writer, you sit in a blank room and you stare at a screen until beads of blood form on your forehead. Well, consider being an editor. We're doing the same thing, except we're reading bad prose every day. Really bad every day. And it's not even our first job. The editor's job is to make the publisher happy. In order to make the publisher happy, the editor has to publish a magazine that the readers are going to want to read and the advertisers are going to want to advertise in and bring money into the publication. And 5th or 6th on the list of the editor's job responsibility is to read submissions. You'd think it was first, right? The bottom of the barrel. And you know why? Because as many people as are in this room who want to be writers, just think how many are out there who want to be writers. There are so many of them. And we have to deal with them all. And so, well, you know what? We have form rejection letters. Yeah, it's harsh, it's sad, I'm sorry. We don't want to do that to you. But when I'm rejecting 300 or 500 stories a week, I really don't have time to write you a detailed letter explaining why I'm rejecting your story. Yeah. So make my job easier and send a checklist. Send a blank checklist saying, well, just tell me what's wrong with my story. Is it the characters, is it the plot, is it the setting, is it this, that? We're not going to do that. We're going to send you a rejection letter. The rejection letter may have a couple of words on it or maybe an entire page, but you know what this rejection letter says? It says no. It says, I don't want to pay you money for this story. Period. End of discussion. That's it. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying you can't write. I'm saying I'm not going to give you money for this story. Peddle it somewhere else. That's all a rejection letter says. When I worked at Analog, we sent out rejection letters. We sent out form rejection letters all the friggin' time. And occasionally we'd get letters back saying, you know, I know John Campbell was the editor. For those who don't know science fiction, John Campbell is the god who created modern science fiction. He was the editor of Analog for 34 years before I got there. And John Campbell is known for working with writers and helping them along with their careers and with their writing and helping them turn into, that's a good story. These people are continually writing and saying, you know, when John Campbell was there, he always helped writers. He would never send a form rejection letter. And for that, we actually have another form rejection letter, which is, buddy, John Campbell wrote this form rejection letter. Yes, if I, the editor, think your story is that close, if I think your talent is that close, I'm going to send you a personalized rejection letter telling you why I think it's that close but not there, because you are a rare gem, and I want you to send me stuff that I want to publish. If your story isn't that close, it doesn't matter what you say. You're going to get a form rejection letter. Deal with it. You need a thick skin if you're a writer, because that's all you're going to be getting. It's a tough gig. Sorry, I didn't sit there. Man, my train just derailed there. Form rejection letters. Yeah, see, the fun of being a writer is that when the train derails, you just sit in front of the screen until it comes back on the tracks. But in front of an audience, you got to do a song and dance, a little soft shoe here, which isn't going to sell my story, but it's going to distract you while I get back to what I was going to talk about next, which was... Man, I completely lost that one. Okay. It's a tough gig being an editor. It's a tough gig being a writer. Oh, and for those of you who want to keep yourself from getting published and you're quite certain you don't ever want to be published but you're a writer, you might want to start off by writing trilogies. Really big doorstops, because it takes a long time to finish that, and then when you go back to edit it, it takes a long time to clean it up, and by the time you're done with it, you're going to be completely done, which is great. The vast majority of authors who actually get published, they start with shorter stuff. They write short things. You know why? Because it takes less time to write it, and less time to edit it, and less time to finish it. Thank you very much, my lovely assistant. It takes less time to finish that short thing, and wow, you know, you can practice, because once you finish this short thing, you're going to write another short thing, and another, and another, and another, and by the time you've written 10 of them, go back and read the first one. And you're going to say, geez, this sucks. I'm so much better than I was. But if you're doing that with novels, it takes a hell of a lot longer to get to the 10th one and realize the first one was bad. Yeah. Those who don't really want to get published, they're really great, because after they finish that story and they put it in the mail, you know what they do? They stand by the mailbox waiting for the response. Those who actually want to get published, they completely forget about the story they've just sent out, and they write the next one. And they put that one in the mail, and they write the next one. Because some of us take a long time to read submissions. Ooh, yeah, sorry. It happens, you know, like I said, it's the 5th or 6th item on an editor's job description when he edits a magazine, and book publishers are even more fun. The few who actually take freelance submissions anymore, and there aren't many of them, just because there are so many people who want to write. One of them, I've got a lot of friends who work at Tor Books. Tor is the big science fiction publisher. And Tor, at least when last I spoke with them, was still taking freelance submissions. They may have changed it recently, so check the guidelines before you send them a book. But what they do at Tor, which, by the way, is a really neat little office. They're in the Flatiron Building, which is a triangular-shaped thing in New York, for those who don't know it. It's interesting. You walk into, if you normally walk into an office, what do you have? There's the receptionist desk, there's a little space, there are some offices off the hall. If you walk into Tor, it's like walking into a dungeon. It's these little tiny hallways with books arching all the way over you, and where there aren't books, there are piles of manuscripts, and there are little warrens and tiny little offices in there. It's a really fertile environment for a writer, but man, it's a miserable place if you have to spend any time in there. And one of these little warrens, rooms off the side, is the submissions room where they stack in the manuscripts. And when they can't get in the door anymore, they call in all the editors and the assistant editors, and they say, okay, we're getting pizza Saturday. Everybody's coming in to read manuscripts. And they clear through the stacks of manuscripts.